through our first 6 games, comparatively speaking to the first 6 games of the previous 3 years, it's the best we've done. I think we have a long way to go, but I think our practice itinerary and the motivation and priority that we've placed on defense, team defense, has been much better, and that's not necessarily because of our kids. It's probably more so because of me. I think I've helped hold them accountable more. Not that they weren't trying to do right in the past. I just think that we're holding them more accountable.
Coach, in the game last night, Dexter Strickland on UNC was face guarding Jordan Taylor live. Who guards Jordan Taylor on Saturday, and how do you guard him?
I don't know. I think he's probably one of the first point guards taken in the NBA draft. I think he's really good. If you study his numbers, he's as good as anybody in the country during his tenure at Wisconsin. A lot of that has to do with Wisconsin's style of play. A lot of that has to do with his skill set. So do we have anybody that can guard him? I don't know. If you were watching the game a little closer, a lot of guys guarded him. It wasn't just Dexter. You know, it was Kendall Marshall, it was Zeller, it was everybody. And so I think he puts you in a position that makes many people have to guard him.
Coach, where do you start with your planning for Wisconsin? Do you rely on recent history, or do you rely on what they've done so far this year?
Probably a combination of both. I think anytime you play a common opponent, such as Wisconsin on an annual basis, you probably start with your last game versus them, and then go from there. So I've watched all of the games that we have played against Wisconsin. I've watched all their games this year, and then I've watched the last 7 games that they played last season. So that would be, I may be off 1 or 2. 3 games in the NCAA tournament, Big Ten tournament, last regular season game, I think is what it is.
New pieces of the puzzle for them this year, getting more time. Is it, but same offense? Is that what you take?
Yeah, personnel changes every year for every team for the most part. You know, nobody thought that number 40 was as good as he was, but it was, what I remember, the same story they said about Lure when I first got here as an assistant, which is a credit to Coach Ryan and his staff, and also to their system. Their system of how they play, but also their system of how they develop players.
Coach Vander's journey obviously is known. He's saying this is just a normal game. Do you need to say anything to him before? Do you feel like now he's a sophomore, he's more mature for a situation like this?
Yeah, I think probably there are more people in Madison and in Milwaukee that are making a big deal about Vander playing in Madison than Vander thinks of it. No, I won't say anything different to him than I say any other game, nor any of our other players. It's an important game, and we're going to play about 20, hopefully about 23 more just like it from this point forward. It just so happens this is the first one.
Coach, a lot of your defense is predicated on forcing turnovers. Seeing that, you know, Wisconsin does a really good job of protecting the ball, how does that change your game plan? Or
just don't guard them. I just won't guard them.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess just don't guard them. Just stand there and let them turn their offense side top side and run a ball screen in the last 10 seconds, and don't guard them and let them shoot. I mean, we're gonna guard them the best we can, and hope that our pressure changes the rhythm, changes their pace. It didn't last night against one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country, on the road. So that speaks to how strong they are with the ball and how disciplined they are within what they do. But I don't think we just completely change what we believe to be right either.
Defensive focus is obviously part of it in any game, but does it become even more important when they're taking 30 seconds off the shot clock and you've got so many passes?
Well, they're the slowest team in the country from a possession standpoint, and you know, if they average 56 possessions a game, and we average 86, so that's diametrically opposed. So there's not as many possessions, and so the value of every possession is increased, and so turnovers, bad shots, quick shots, surprise shots, even free throws. You know, if you're used to accumulating a lot of your points from the free throw line, some of that is based on the number of possessions you get offensively. Well, if you don't get that number of possessions offensively, you're probably not going to get the same number of free throw opportunities either. So everything is scaled down.
Derek and Todd have been really big for you guys through 6 games. This is their first real true test, maybe more so than the older guys who've been through it. What do you see their contributions?
I hope both of them will help us. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm immature. This is what I grew up wanting to do. And I think if you're a high major player, you grow up wanting to do this. And not to be negative towards anybody from Wisconsin or Marquette. High major players want to play against high major players. High major coaches want to coach against high major coaches. And that's not to downplay the rivalry or the importance. But, when we play our next game, I'm probably going to say the same thing. I'm not going to answer the questions the same way because Washington plays different than Wisconsin. But it's fun to me. It's not paralyzing. Oh no, we're playing in Madison and it's Coach Ryan. I stand at attention and respect for Coach Ryan. I've told him that publicly. I've told him that privately. Just because they do things different than us, that doesn't make us more right or them more wrong or vice versa. Let's play and see who wins.
It's been a focus in practice.
Same stuff it is every day. Yeah, our practice itineraries are very similar to my media availabilities. They're all kind of the same. Somebody asks a smart-ass question, I reply with a smart-ass response. Because we do the same stuff. Like I said, somebody asked it the other night. We tweak what some of the things that we do, but relative to what we're going to do, it's not a dramatic change.
But you still instilling that practice of paying attention to the number on the jersey as opposed to the name, and is that difficult when you're facing a team like this that these guys probably know better than some of their other opponents?
I don't know. I've never really said anything about the name on the jersey or anything like that. I understand where that comes from. I love our guys. I love coming to work every day. I love being around them. I think they're unselfish by nature. Are they more familiar with these guys than they are the guys from Villanova or the guys at Georgetown? I don't know. I think once we get into Big East play, I don't know that our guys are paying attention to the Big Ten standings and vice versa. I think they have the same number of guys from Wisconsin that we do. So it's not like Jay Crowder grew up with Mike Bruzewicz. You know what I mean? So it's not. Our kids probably could answer that better than I could.
On Monday, Jay said that this team is more prepared going into the Wisconsin game than last year's team was going into the Wisconsin game. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
We were the second youngest team in our league last year. A lot of our guys were still figuring out that Milwaukee was in Wisconsin and that Wisconsin did have a state school and that's who we were playing. So we're not better prepared relative to the swing. We're better prepared in relation to what we have done up until this point in preparation for how we go about things. Played with a bunch of young guys last year. In a large extent, we're still young. We bring 5 guys off the bench, and they're all freshmen or sophomores. So we're not necessarily an old team, but we're definitely older than we were last year.
What did you think of the North Carolina game, and did you take anything away from it?
I think it speaks to Wisconsin's discipline, how sound they are on both ends of the floor. It brought back nightmares of how we couldn't enter offense either against North Carolina's length and athleticism, and how they closed the gaps down as fast as anybody in the country because they're just so long and athletic and fast. And they're throwing, Kendall Marshall's throwing the ball over 6 guys' heads on a dime to one of his teammates. I remember all that. So it was kind of a combination of both. Yeah, I was paying attention to Wisconsin, but also reliving the first half of the North Carolina game back in March.
Coach, were you surprised at all that the Badgers kind of controlled the tempo of that game, but they didn't shoot very well? So you'd think that if you didn't shoot well, North Carolina would just get out and run, but their transition points were minimal.
Well, it's like a football game. It's time of possession. you'd have to study the math behind it, but if you play 56 possessions a game and 40% of your points come in the last 8 seconds of the shot clock, whether a team goes down there fast or slow, Wisconsin's still doing the same thing. And so it's time of possession. So if Wisconsin shoots the ball and scores 40% of their points in the last 6 seconds of the shot clock, whether you go shoot it in 6 seconds or 30 seconds, numerically, they're about to do the same thing their next possession. And so the game goes from this to this. And you're right, they didn't shoot it, 47% of their shots have been from 3. So, rewind even farther. So, you're going to shoot the ball in the last 6 seconds of the shot clock, unless the opponent just gives you a layup. And 47% of all of your shots have been threes. So, that's, when you don't make those shots, that doesn't necessarily speed up the game. It probably forces you to have to take more threes because you're missing the ones that you're taking. If that makes sense.
The numbers made my head spin a little bit, but I'm with
That's
you.
all right. I was trying to help you understand your question better.
When your guys have it instilled in them to get up and down the court the way they do, how difficult is it for your staff to get those guys to change for this one game and be focused for a full 30, 35-second defensive stand?
Yeah, I told our guys yesterday, Ganser, that you have to be really good against Wisconsin in the first 25 seconds of the possession. You have to be even better the last 10 seconds of the possession. And that's what they're preying on. With an E, not an A. That's what Wisconsin is, I think. I haven't been to their practices. But I think that their first 25 seconds, if you're not any good, they're going to whip you anyway. But if you are solid, then you better be more than solid the last 10 seconds. And they are as good as anybody in the country on late clock possessions.